welcome again to the Protractor webinar series. And today we're going to work our way into the time clock and the actual technician view, mostly focusing on the time clock activity from the technician view. As always, we're going to try and limit ourselves to about 45 minutes of instruction, leaving a little bit of time for some question and answer periods pertaining to today's topic. And I think most of you that have been on the webinars know that all the recordings, handouts, and everything will be posted under the help system under webinars. So let's go ahead and get started with today's presentation. Our agenda for today, we're going to look at the time clock login. So all the various opportunities to log into the time clock. We're going to talk about the time clock setup. There's quite a few options in there that we're going to want to review so everything works the way you want it to work. We're going to look at the technician view, which is a fairly new feature in the software, and mostly focusing again on the time clock activity. There's some really nice features there. Time clock records and time clock reports. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start with a poll question right off of the gate. And Jeff, if you could bring up our first poll question. Okay, we just kind of want to get a feel. How many of you attending today actually use the time clock? About 45 of the people in the group are saying no. So not really much I can do to respond on that. Great. Hopefully after today's meeting, those of you who are not using the time clock might want to take advantage of it. And for those that are using the time clock, hopefully we can refine some of the issues that you might be having with the time clock. I've got another poll question we're going to pop up right away. Okay, on this one, I'm trying to read Jeff's. Jeff and I met earlier on this, but what activities does the time clock allow you to track and monitor? So attendance, work orders, jobs, events, or all of the above. We've got 16% of the folks that are saying that attendance, 0% say work orders, 0% say jobs, and 3% say productive and non-productive events, and 81% of the people say all of the above. So let's take a look at that. The answer is all of the above. Now, the wording here might be a little bit tricky, but just made it a little note. I thought I'd bring these up and just make a comment on these. The time clock allows the user to track and monitor employee attendance, time spent on a work order, or a labor line from a work order, and also time clock events, which would be non-productive or other activities outside of a work order. So good. So let's just dive right in. We've got a little feel for where the audience is today, and so let's just go ahead and dive right into our presentation then. I'm trying to get back to the audience view, Jeff. I'm still seeing the poll question up there. I don't know if I need to do something on my side.
There you go.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so let's start with some basic stuff, logging on to the time clock. What we want to do is just dive right into the software and take a little look at how the time clock actually works. There's several ways, so stay with us and we'll get them all covered. From the main ribbon on the login, time clock is available, and if we just click on the clock part of it, it's a matter of simply logging in. Identify who the technician or the employee is that's doing the login. Put in the password, and let me just see, that probably bounced off to my other monitor, so let me bring it over here. So this is your general time clock login screen. If we look across the top, we're going to see the employee and the current time of date. We're going to see clock time, and this would be total clocked time, okay, for the day. And then, of course, the productivity. Now, as we all know, this is going to change and build as the day goes on. Every hour that passes, every time clock activity is going to be updated, so keep that in mind. I just want to make a note, which is different for the legacy users than the way legacy used to work. Attendance is an automatic login. So when anybody logs into the time clock, it's going to automatically log them into attendance. If you people that used legacy remember, attendance had to be an event. In the new software, it's automatically logging in anytime anybody logs in to the time clock. you're going to see the active area, which would identify whatever this employee is currently clocked into. So you can see attendance started at 8:50 this morning for a total of 3 hours and 15 minutes so far. This employee is clocked into this work order, so that's displaying under active. Available is going to identify any work orders that have been assigned to this technician that are available to clock in. Now, a point here to keep in mind, the technician can clock into the work order, which would be this clock in, or if we open up the work order, the technician has the ability to clock into an individual labor line. So just keep that in mind. We can clock into the entire work order. If that work order had several different items on it, if I'm not mistaken, this one probably isn't going to show it because it's down here, but let me just show you guys. Let me clock into this work order. When we clock in or change our clock-ins, keep in mind that all work order clock-ins are what are called exclusive. Exclusive means you're only going to be able to track one activity. The scenario here that we normally explain is, an example, if a technician has a work order that has an oil change, a brake job, and a cooling system job on it, okay, we can only track one of those items because, in other words, where is the technician working? Or if they clock into the work order, it's tracking all items on that work order, but it's exclusive, meaning I can't clock into the Chevrolet over here that I'm doing a cooling system flush on and the Ford I'm doing a brake job on. So you will have to identify which activity you want to track. When you clock into a different job, being exclusive, then it's going to clock the technician out of the job that they're currently under, meaning under the active. Every time you clock in or clock out, you have the ability to enter a note. These notes are optional. They are tracked. They're viewable on all reporting and in the time clock records if you want your technicians to enter a note. Additionally, the job you're clocking out of, which is the work order 202, the software is going to ask me, do you want to mark this work order, all the jobs on this work order is complete? So if the technician is done with all the work on work order 202, then they would mark it as complete. If they're not, don't mark it as complete. And now when I make this change, you're going to see I'm now clocked off of 202 and I'm clocked on to work order 203. I was just going to explain again that you have the ability to clock onto the work order or the individual labor lines on a work order. So it's just whatever you want to track. Do you want to track the time on the cooling system flush, or do you just want to track the time on the work order? Both of those are available. Events. The employee has the ability to clock on to events. We normally refer to these as non-productive time, but that's not necessarily the way it has to work. Okay, in this case, we're going to see I can clock on to waiting on parts, authorizations, or no jobs available. You can see I've already clocked, or this technician has already clocked on to waiting for authorization at some point in time today for 9 minutes. So you will receive a summary on each of the clock-in lines. So if we just look at these, we're going to see here the technician was clocked into this job for 2 hours and 12 minutes, okay? And the invoiced amount is 10 hours. So there are 10 hours worth of labor on that invoice. So just remember, all these clock-ins are exclusive, meaning if I want to clock into something else, the system's going to automatically clock me out of the job I'm currently clocked into. There is an action button at the bottom, which allows you to do a refresh, and that might be a good idea occasionally, or clock out of attendance. And if I clock out of attendance, it's going to clock me out of everything. Because if I'm no longer in attendance, I certainly can't be working on work order number 203. Another item to keep in mind is completed. When I mark a job as completed, it's going to move from the General tab to the Completed tab. Okay, so you can see I have marked some items completed. I still have the ability to go back and clock in. So maybe I marked them completed by mistake, or we sold a little more work and I need to go back to work on this. So keep in mind, all the jobs are going to give you the ability to clock into work orders or individual lines. You'll get a summary of time spent on that job, and that's basically it. It's very, very simple to use. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this up. Let's go back to the presentation and just do a quick review. For the time clock, there is a summary which includes the employee that's clocked in and the current time of day. The total time clocked in for the day and the productivity for the day. Attendance is automatically logged in when anybody logs into the time clock itself. The General tab, oh, and I'm sorry I didn't offer this to you, so let me just bounce back real quick, and so I don't miss any of these little features that you certainly want to know about. There's a search box in here. If I'm looking for something specific like work order number 202, okay, I can type that information in. Oops, excuse me, sorry, could not do it that way. Let's just see here. Well, I'm losing my thought train on search, but anyway, if I type a portion of the information in, then that's basically what it's going to display. Okay, so your searching allows you to narrow down the list of activities. So if I take that off, you're going to see it's going to bring these items back on. So your search, I'm sure your guys are going to be a lot busier than my guys are because I've only got 2 cars in the shop today. But the search allows you to narrow down the search and the information that you're going to be displaying. Sorry, I missed that. So don't forget about your search capability. Under the active section displays all the current clocked in items. Available displays any jobs or labor lines assigned to the technician available to clock in. Clock in and clock out availability by work order or the labor line. Events will display time clock events available to clock in. Remembering that when we switch, we clock into a different job, it's going to clock us out of the old job, and that's essentially what exclusive means. I can only be clocked into one item at a time. When changing a clock-in item, the active clock-in item is going to be clocked out. And remember, you have the ability to put notes in there or mark that clock-out item as completed. Clock in and clock out, notes and completed. And then there's a little action button, which is down on the bottom. And don't forget about anything that's been marked as completed will be moved to the completed tab. Okay. Let's do another poll question right quick if we can. Okay, again, my questions may be a little bit different than what Jeff has up. Does the time clock automatically clock everyone out at the end of the day? Well, guess what, folks? Loaded question. Everybody got it right. The time clock can clock everyone out at the end of the day, and this is a setting that is under location settings. We'll take a look at it here in a minute. So under location settings, time clock. If this setting is activated, what will happen then is in case some people forget to clock out, and when you guys close up the shop, it will clock everybody out of all activity at 12 a.m. So I'm going to show you this if that's anything you want to take advantage of. It's your choice, whichever way you want to go.